another book report. And the title of the book is The One Thing, written by Gary Keller. Before I go into this book report, the bulk of the presentation, I want to relate to you a story. Many, many years ago, there was a wise old king, and he called all of his wise men together, and he said, I want you to compound for me the wisdom of the ages. I want you to put it in bound book form. So they went out, and they wrote a very long time, and they came back with 12 huge volumes. And the king looked at them, and he said, you know, I'm sure this is the wisdom of the ages, but it's too lengthy, people won't read it, you've got to condense it. So they went out, they came back with one volume, then a chapter, then a page, and finally they came back with a paragraph, and ultimately they came back with one sentence, because the king kept telling them, condense it, condense it, condense it. And when he looked at this, and he said, hey, that's it. And as soon as all men everywhere learn this, then most of our problems will be solved. And the sentence simply said, there ain't no free lunch. There really is no free lunch. We do have to work. But that's not the main point of the story. You see, the king, he was called the wise old king for a reason, because he knew that when you condense something so small that your focus is only on one thing, that's when you'll have the greatest amount of success. And that's what this whole book is all about. And pretty much it talks about narrowing your focus and where the idea came from, and ultimately how we can incorporate it into our lives. So let's go ahead and dive into the one thing. The idea came from an Italian economist by the name of Vilfredo Pareto in the late 19th century. And he made a mathematical model of the wealth distribution in all of Italy, and he came up with the ratio that 80% of the land was owned by only 20% of the people. So a very unequal distribution. Scientists later discovered that this proportion, or this distribution, pretty much affects many other areas of life. So for example, in business, 80% of your business will come from maybe just a small percentage of your customers. Or in most sales organizations, most of the sales are made by the few top people. And in achieving any goals, whether it be health or whatever, there's only usually a few things that you can do that will make the most of the difference. So Gary Keller, he pretty much used this idea, but what he found was the most beneficial was he narrowed that 20% even further. So taking the 20% of the 20% of the 20% until you get to one thing that you can focus all of your energy on. And he used that to build one of the largest real estate companies in all of North America, Keller Williams Real Estate Company. And he pretty much expands upon this idea of focusing on one thing. And the book mentions several different ways we can incorporate it into our lives. One of the ways is he talks about how you can discover what your one thing is. So he came up with the idea of a focusing question. The question is, what's the one thing that I can do such that by doing it, everything else will become easier or unnecessary? And there's different variations of the question, like what's the one thing I can do for my health? Or what's the one thing I can do for my key relationships? What's the one thing I can do for my business, such that by doing it, everything else will become easier and unnecessary. And once you find that one thing, focus more of your time, more of your energy, and more of your money on that one thing, and the results will, according to Gary Keller, skyrocket. So there are a few concepts that really stood out to me. One of the concepts is the idea of time alignment. So pretty much making an appointment for yourself, and this applies more for work, like in your work life, figure out what's the one thing that I can do to be the most productive for my company, and schedule an appointment with yourself where you don't let anybody else interrupt you, or you turn off your cell phone, you shut down the internet browsers and all that. good stuff, and you focus on doing that one thing for 4 hours. I think that's a long time, but it's in the book. That's one of the things. There's a lot of other good ideas. Ultimately, I think this book is a really good book. It's a very short read. It's about 200 pages, but most of the pages don't even have too many words.
Wow.
On there. And there's a lot of pictures too that make it really easy to understand, like different charts. Ultimately, the vocabulary is really simple. I never looked in the dictionary once for this book, and it made it really easy to read. I recommend it for anyone who has a lot of stress in their lives. Maybe they want to be more productive. It's really helped me out, like just get all the clutter out of the unnecessary things that I think I have to do to become successful, and really just like honing in on one thing. I think that's all I gotta say. If you don't get anything else from this presentation, just remember this one thing: there ain't no free lunch.